Well, it's a pleasure to be here to look at all those bright, young, shining faces because I know I'm looking at the future of advertising. And you may think looking at me, you're looking at the past of advertising. But I'm also the present because I'm still doing it. And my wife of many, many years asked me, she said, Bobby, when are you going to retire? You're 82 years old, you know? And I said, never, because I love this business. I love advertising and everything about it. And I wrote a book which is called Street Smart. And a lot of those stories are about advertising. But my favorite story in this book has absolutely nothing to do with advertising. In fact, it happened right here on this campus at SMU. And it's a story about my brother who, in spite of his mediocre average transcript from North Dallas High School, got a full academic scholarship here at SMU. And that was before affirmative action. The title of this story is Mission Impossible. Now, after working in a minimum wage job for a while, my brother decided he wanted to go to college. So he asked the dean at SMU to give him an entrance exam. And of course, the dean had to decline and suggested he try enrolling in a community college. But after 3 years of pleading and begging for an entrance exam, his diligent persistence finally paid off. The exasperated dean said, if you promise to never again call me, write to me, or come by my office, we'll give you an entrance exam, okay? The rest is history. And it was seemingly impossible for this guy to get a full academic scholarship at SMU and go on and graduate at the top of his class. He was in the National Honor Fraternity. He was who's who in American colleges. He got the Blue Key, and he received the highest honor that SMU can give a student, the M Award. And then Harvard offered him a scholarship to come up to Cambridge to take his MBA. So it's kind of an amazing story, but unfortunately, sadly, he was diagnosed with an incurable autoimmune disease, and he died when he was only 27. But I know my brother, he loved SMU, and I know he's up there somewhere smiling right now because I'm here. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to tell you a little bit about ancient history and advertising. What happened back in the 1960s. Now I know you've all seen Mad Men, a real popular award-winning TV show. Aside from all the heavy drinking and the chain smoking and the titillating adulterous sex, I have a lot in common with that lead character, Don Draper, because like Don Draper, I kind of stumbled into the advertising business accidentally, and I might add under highly unusual circumstances. Because as a kid growing up, the only thing I knew for sure was that someday I wanted to be somebody. Now, I guess I should have been more specific because I've bounced around from one career to another, like a pinball in a machine full of flippers. I've had a lot of different careers. My career as a singer started when I was a teenager in the Army. I'd never sung anywhere, but God blessed me with a voice, and I started singing everywhere, with big bands, in supper clubs, and I finally wound up on Your Hit Parade. And I had a career as a music composer, and I wrote more than 100 jingles and music themes. My mystery writing career was really a challenge. I'd never read a mystery story, but I wrote and published stories that were featured in Mystery Digest. My art and photography career started when I opened up a studio in Manhattan. And I learned to be a professional artist and photographer on the job. And of course, I've always been a serial entrepreneur. And I'm happy to say I've had mostly winners and very few losers. I've had a lot of different careers, but one day it occurred to me, you know, why not combine all of those creative talents into just one big career, advertising? Well, there's just one problem with that. I didn't know anything about advertising. I thought marketing was going to Kroger's. And there was nobody around like Professor Hall to teach me and show me, you know, the ropes. So I figured the quickest, easiest way to learn about advertising is maybe to try to get a job as an intern at some advertising agency. So I applied at every advertising agency in Dallas-Fort Worth, hoping that somebody might give me an unpaid intern job, maybe doing menial tasks. I was willing to work long hours for free, make their coffee, take out the trash, shine their shoes, anything. I just wanted to get into advertising to learn about it. Well, nobody wanted me. I didn't even have a resume. In fact, I'd never been to college, and I'd never had a real job. So I was just kind of left out. I felt discouraged and even humiliated, sort of like that comedian Rodney Dangerfield, if you remember him. He used to say, I'll tell you, I get no respect. Well, I got no respect. So what do you do when every single door to advertising is slammed shut in your face? Well, I decided, you know, I think I'll just start my own damn advertising agency. So I did, and $15 worth of business cards later, I was Phillips Advertising and Creative Services Incorporated. Now the thing is, I didn't have any accounts. I didn't even have any prospects for accounts. But I had one thing going for me: unbridled imagination. No boundaries, no restrictions, no rules. I had no limitations whatsoever. I just let my imagination run wild. And that's where breakthrough ideas come from. And I had a few good ones that would challenge and improve the status quo. But I knew nobody's going to buy any ideas from a guy that's a young upstart. You know, I'm a beginner, and that was a problem. Nobody's going to respect or accept any ideas from me. So I thought about it, and I came up with a solution. I finally found an elderly gentleman who was a retired executive. Now, he had an amazing resume, and he was an advertising and marketing, you know, graduate, had a degree, all of that. And of course I didn't. And at that time, I met this elderly gentleman. He had gray hair, he was very distinguished, a little mustache, a very dapper guy. But all he did was play golf all day, go fishing, and do, you know, what retired people do. And I approached him and I asked him, I said, how would you like to make money for doing nothing? And he thought I was kidding. I said, seriously. And I explained my dilemma to him. And I asked him, I said, hey, how would you like to get a paycheck every week for doing nothing? I said, I just want you to tutor me a little bit, every now and then answer some of my stupid questions, and teach me a little bit about advertising. Well, he said, you got a deal. So we shook hands, and right then and there, I signed my first employee, who was to be my boss and the president of my corporation. And I'm not kidding, I named my dog chairman of the board. And that's because I didn't want a title. I didn't want to be anything. Now I could give credit to my president, who had that illustrious resume, and I could give him credit for all of the strategies and concepts that I came up with, you know, because I knew, hey, that's the only way anybody's going to buy anything from me. And it worked. In fact, it worked even better than I expected, because in a few days, I picked up my first advertising account. I was thrilled. But the funny part of this story is that I took that account away from one of the big agencies that I had interviewed with only weeks earlier, trying to get an unpaid intern job. So I really enjoyed taking one of their accounts away, and oh, how sweet that was. But by the way, that's an account that I still have today after all these years. Now, usually if an advertising agency keeps a retail account for several years, and I had this one for over 5 decades, but whenever you keep an account that long, it's a retail account. Sometimes it's just a case of nepotism or maybe even blackmail, but in my situation, it was a case of good old-fashioned creativity that works. But at least I was smart enough to surround myself with people who were smarter than I was, and they all made me look good. So as we were growing, we kept moving to bigger and bigger offices until finally we bought our own building. And I think the funny part of this was that we kept this all kind of top secret, under the radar. I didn't want the competition really to know who we were or what we were doing. And there were some advantages in that. We didn't join the Ad League or any of those organizations, and we never released any financial information or talked about our clients. But we were a force to be reckoned with because our competition found out they were losing some business to us. They began to realize that the success of our accounts had to do with the creativity. By the way, I think creativity today is even more important than it was back in the 60s when I started. To prove this point, IBM did a recent study. You may be familiar with this. They asked 1,500 CEOs worldwide what they considered to be the most important quality of leadership, and most of them, the majority, said creativity. It's interesting that as children, as we're growing up, we're all taught what to think. And a lot of times that's where bias and prejudice comes from. But nobody teaches us how to think. And that's where imagination comes from. I think Albert Einstein said it best. He said, imagination is more important than knowledge. He said, logic will get you from point A to point B, but imagination will take you everywhere. And I know I'm looking at, the future leaders here, and I know you're going to go everywhere and do everything until you reach the top. And I'm going to wish you all a lot of success, a lot of happiness getting there. And I know you're going to do it. I want to say, first of all, that I'd be more than happy right now at this point to answer any questions you might have that you want to ask a madman from the 60s who's still doing it. I'd be delighted to answer any of your questions if you have any. You've been a great group, so just let me know. Is there anything you want to know about the past or even the present? Anybody? Yes. This prompted a lively and engaging question and answer session that followed and continued for 37 minutes. And you've been a great group. Thank you. Thank you.